Welcome to Talking Carts, the Consumer Reports podcast that helps you shop smarter, save more, and feel good about every purchase. I'm Tanya Christian,
And I'm Brian Vines.
and
And
this
this is
is Talking
Talking
Carts.
The days are long, school is out, and the SPF is on. That means road trip season is officially upon us. And if you're like me, that means memories of a backseat next to your sibs, divvying up the snacks that you planned long in advance of putting a single article of clothing into a bag. I'm talking Cheetos, Chips Ahoy, Skittles, and a cool high C to wash it all down.
Okay, so for me, it was all about the Capri Suns, the Sour Patch Kids, and Doritos. As a Jersey girl, all those snacks would go right into my beach bag and cooler whenever I made my way to the shore for a day at the beach with my friends. If your summertime nostalgia comes with a rundown of snacks that were anything but carrot sticks and orange wedges, this episode of Talking Cards is going to be an eye opener because we're sharing what we learned about additives and contaminants in some of our favorite snack foods.
A new investigation from Consumer Reports and Yuka, the app that analyzes the health impact of food products and cosmetics, found concerning levels of contaminants and additives. Some at levels so high that a single serving had more than the amount some public health agencies recommend for a full-grown adult to consume daily.
And this is Talking Cards. So we do name the names of the ingredients you should be watching out for, things like titanium dioxide. And while you may not know exactly what it is or even what it does, you are sure to know something it's in, like a Little Debbie oat milk cream pie or those powdered mini donuts from Hostess. Yeah, that's in there. I'm sorry to tarnish the memory of your entire grade school lunch bag, but knowledge is power, and we're here to help you make informed decisions.
That's right. And one of the most informed people we know is our colleague, Paris Martineau, who is joining us to talk about the results of CR's investigation of additives and contaminants in snack foods we all know and mostly love, depending on your individual taste, of course. But this isn't a matter of individual taste. It's an issue of broad concern for the snacking community and a wake-up call for anyone who eats and has never questioned just what's in our food.
Paris, welcome to Talking Cards. So, the number one question on our mind, what is in our food?
Thanks so much, guys. I mean, it's a question that's on my mind a lot, too. It turns out a lot of things you don't want. Like Ryan said, it's an issue for the snacking community, and I consider myself part of that community.
Definitely.
I think as we all do.
Yes.
Not only the client, I'm the snacker president. Yes.
Yeah, I'd like to be on the snacking chief of staff at the very least.
The first line of your story stopped us in our tracks. Quote, not even the Food and Drug Administration knows exactly how many additives are in the U.S. food supply. So that begs a lot of questions, but chief among them, was there ever a time when we did know the number of additives in our supply and we lost the plot? And do Canada, Mexico, and France know how many additives are in their foods?
Yeah, this is a detail of reporting this out that also really stopped me in my tracks. So I was like, we got to put it at the top of the story. I mean, to answer your question, it seems like there really has seemingly never been a time that the U.S. has known precisely how many additives are used in our food. I went back through, textbooks. I spoke to experts, and it seems like the closest we've come is in the early 1950s or so, when both average Americans and lawmakers alike were really worried about the same problems we're talking about right now. One congressman, this guy James Delaney, chaired a committee investigating this very topic, and they found out that basically their best guess was that, quote, approximately 840 chemicals are thought to be used in food, but of that total, they could only say about 420 were considered to be safe. So this issue dates back a while, and it's something that we in the U.S. have been dealing with for a while. But other countries, to your other part of your question, other countries aren't approaching this in the same way. For instance, in Europe, you have kind of a combined effort of the European Commission and the European Food Food Safety Authority, EFSA, that basically they have a system where you can't have anything be a food additive or added to food in Europe unless it goes through a really complicated process and gets actively affirmed and allowed into food. So they have a very precise list of everything allowed in their food, and they know what those chemicals are because they review them regularly.
That's so out of control to think that we haven't had an accurate accounting since the 50s when they used to have doctors on TV telling you to smoke because it's good for your throat. And that was the
3 out of
last
5
time.
doctors recommend cigarettes.
And that was the last time someone stood up and said, we've got 800 something and 400 of them are safe. So I'm like, imagine the leaps and bounds that we've made since then, but we still don't even know what's in our food. That's mind
I mean,
boggling.
yeah, and that's another one of the things about this whole reporting process that just really astounded me is as I was looking through the regulatory history for, we tested a lot of different food products and snacks and drinks for a lot of different stuff, but I was looking through all like 10 of the substances and I was like, all right, well, what are the US regulations on this? And when were they last updated? And for a lot of them, it has been, 50 years since the US last took a good hard look at the safety of some of these chemicals. And that's just was astounding to me.
I mean, I think it should be astounding to everybody. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it's been almost 75 years since the 50s, so it might be a good time to take a look at those things. But Paris, could you give us a grass explainer?
Yes. So this is a term that it sounds kind of hard to wrap your head around. It's GRAS, GRS. It stands for generally recognized as safe. So like the context is after they did this kind of big hearing in the 50s where they're like, oh, only half of the things in the food are safe. What are we going to do? They passed this law that was supposed to kind of give us a system like Europe. The goal was that anything added to food would be considered unsafe unless you petitioned the FDA and they approved, yeah, that's a great safe food additive. But they were like, well, we're just one agency. There's a lot of stuff used in food, at least 800 things that we can count. And also, what exactly is a food additive anyway? They were like, well, let's have a carve out. Stuff can be generally recognized as safe. This would be stuff like salt or apples mixed into a yogurt or something like that. It was supposed to originally be things that everyone agreed or generally recognized as safe. And that would mean those things don't count as food additives and you can add them to your products. And I'm going to go through this whole complicated process. But over the decades, we've kind of lost track. That's kind of gotten out of hand in a couple of really key ways. The main problem happened in the 90s where they've basically introduced now this loophole that has, to quote the FDA itself, it's like it's a loophole that has swallowed the law. Now, if you want to introduce a new food substance into food products for a company, you got two main paths. One, you can go through the very complicated and arduous food additive petition process, which will take a lot of time and a lot of money. Or you can attest to yourself that it's generally recognized as safe, and you don't have to tell the FDA you've done that, and you don't have to submit anything to anyone. And ostensibly, by attesting that it's generally recognized as safe, you're supposed to have done a list of recommended things, but no one's checking. And so, surprise, surprise, the companies are all doing that.
Pause. All right. Like, attest to yourself.
Yeah.
like that's a standard. I can say, I attest to myself that I recognize this as safe.
Yes. You can say, yeah, it is not the FDA saying it. It's some random company is like, yep, I think this is grass, and you don't have to tell anybody that. Like, there's not a list where companies are like, this is everything that every company is attested to themselves as safe. They can both make the determination themselves, by themselves, and then tell no one. So it gets pretty out of hand pretty
I was
quickly.
going to say, very out of hand.
Because you can see how something is well intentioned, right? Where it's like,
Yeah.
if you wanna sell your mama's biscuits and you're like, there's salt in it. Do I really have to test salt? We all know that we love salt and it's good for you. Like, yeah, that's the intention. But like you said, that loophole has swallowed the law, and now we're attesting to ourselves that something is safe. and then not even disclosing what it is that we all sat around the table without even putting our hand on a Bible and said, "Oh, well, this is good stuff."
Yeah, it's a real mess to put it simply. And I mean, even if you're a company that's maybe trying to do the grass loophole right, all you have to do is then put together a little petition. Not even petition, a little notice saying, hey, here's how we determine it's safe, FDA. The FDA is supposed to respond to that in like 90, 180 days. It either says, we've got no questions, or let's say it has questions or thinks maybe you shouldn't use it. If you're a company that's done that, you can just remove your notice to the FDA and say to yourself, well, we've determined it's safe, and go ahead and use the products anyway. And a lot of researchers have found evidence of people doing just that.
Okay, Paris. So let's take a few steps back, right? Here at CR, we test, report on, and even investigate lots of things from protein powders to radioactive shrimp and lead in things like chocolate or cinnamon. What put snack foods on our radar?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. I think part of what interested us about snack foods is everybody eats them, everybody loves them. And there's also, it's kind of the foods that we tested in this project are kind of the nexus of a larger discussion that has been capturing people on kind of both sides of the aisle in the US, specifically the category of ultra processed foods, which is kind of like a nebulous category that a lot of people define in like a kind of you know it when you see it way. But the best description for it that I've heard is this thing called the NOVA classification system. And it basically means that ultra processed foods are kind of industrially made products that contain a lot of the additives that we tested for specifically. It's when you have basically if you have a product like Cheetos or something where you would have no idea how to make that in a normal kitchen, where it's something that you gotta, it's something we love to eat a Cheeto, but it's like if you then sit down and think, how would
How
I, a
exactly?
person with a kitchen in Brooklyn, create a Cheeto? It baffles the mind. And so I think part of it is we wanted to look at the fact that you have everybody knows there's a lot of additives in American food. It's kind of a
Yeah.
popular topic. And there's sometimes some fear mongering around additives. But the reality is that like these sort of substances can be harmful in depending on the dose. It's kind of a dose makes the poison situation. But in the US, companies are not required to disclose how much of a given additive is actually in the food. You will see on the back of the label it says red 40 on your Cheetos, but you don't know, is that a little bit?
Right.
Is that a lot? Is that a lot? And part of the goal of this was to look at foods that people are eating and consuming every day and understand what sort of exposure, what's the actual risk of being exposed to these sort of additives, and which ones are the things that people should pay attention to.
I do have a bone to pick with you about something in this because you mentioned Cheetos, which are my all-time favorite orange finger, red finger treats.
Great.
When you classify them as child, like what was the exact phrasing? You classify my favorite snacks as like
Oh,
uh
lunchbox snacks?
no, it was even more insulting than lunchbox snacks because I wish that I had a lunchbox today. That wasn't the issue. I'm opening the article right now, but it was
I was to say, I do think
something
it was something kids like that. And it's because it was the combination of Cheetos, Gushers,
and
fruit roll-ups.
Takis.
But yeah, and Takis. But I agree. I mean, the thing is, these things are popular for everyone, not just
Mhm.
kids.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for clarifying.
I must, yeah, respect.
Well, then, I'm a Flamin' Hot fan. Flamin' Hot does not go in the lunchbox. It's too much for the kids. It's a very adult. I like to think of it as a very adult
Apparently, the
snack.
thing I've learned from this as someone who's childless and I can't remember the last time I've seen a teenager. Like, apparently, the kids love Takis. Takis and like flaming hot Takis. The children are obsessed with, which is crazy to me because I feel like that wasn't on my radar when I was growing up.
Were they around? I don't even know if they were around.
They were not around when we
Yeah, I'm like,
were of the lunchbox age. But one thing is, Tanya, like you think they're not a lunchbox thing. They're not a lunchbox thing because these kids are eating them for breakfast. I
It was just
literally am
crazy.
on the train going to work in the morning, and I'll see a kid with a big old jug, big can of Arizona or some Monster or some crazy
Not a
energy drink.
monster.
A monster. I promise. The last time I was on the train headed to work, there was a young woman who was 10 years old if she was a day. And she was sitting next to her mother and she was eating a Taki that was blue, by the way, a blue Taki, and drinking a can of Arizona like strawberry kiwi,
Oh
sitting
my
next to her
gosh.
mother who like took the light route and was just drinking a Monster Energy without any blue
Next to
Takis.
them is a third person who's just taking the direct route and shooting caffeine straight into their veins.
Oh, I like, not to be judgy because
I
I
was about
have
to
no
say, it's my
idea.
most boomer take that food shouldn't be
Right?
blue. I mean, like, I guess maybe I just am not
Yeah.
thinking on the level that the kids are these days, but I feel like blue didn't used to be an option.
No, I
Like
no.
these kids, and they love, and it's the most unnatural, crazy blue and red things. And again, like, I'm not judging, but I'm judging. Like, I can't imagine what kind of day that young woman was setting herself up for, eating a bag of blue Takis
Ooh.
and guzzling down 22 ounces of strawberry kiwi. And and that it's a setup. Like, it just feels to me like and this investigation provides some underpinning for my beliefs that we really
Yeah.
have to change some stuff.
I think that's like the perfect point of this is I feel like the average person, obviously that housing some Cheetos and Takis or, a bunch of fruit gummies generally considered unhealthy. But we I feel like at least to me, the reason why these products are unhealthy is just a regular consumer walking around. I was like, yeah, they're unhealthy just because they're candy or snacks and
Yeah.
you shouldn't be eating those all the time. But I think the important thing that our investigation kind of revealed is there's a myriad of reasons why these products are unhealthy. And one of them it's worth paying attention to is it does expose you to like levels of additives or contaminants that is worth like keeping an eye on. I mean, none of the products we tested, and generally, like, it's very rare to have any food that has like so much of something that it's an acute harm. You eat it and you're
Right.
done for. That's not any of the things we found, but
Right.
they do have notable like levels of additives or contaminants to where if it's something that is like a daily snack before you go to school or, while you're going to work, or it's something you crush whenever you've got to get through a really tough day, instead of having a cup of coffee, you have a, artificial sweetener filled energy drink. It's worth paying attention to how that kind of exposure adds up because since the FDA and regulatory bodies actually reviewed the safety of these things, a lot of research has happened over the last couple of
Yeah.
decades that have found these sort of additives are associated with like harms, especially over time.
Yeah, I think that a lot with our investigations, it's all about the cumulative harm that
Mhm.
happens. And the one-offs, it's like, okay. The boba tea, everyone's okay. The protein, everyone okay. But then if this is a habit and you're constantly doing it, then you have some things to be concerned about.
Yeah, and I mean, I think something I'm not even sure that we touch on that much in the article, but that struck me as I was reporting on it is part of originally how the FDA and Congress agreed on defining harm,
Mm.
because kind of the goal of all these like regulations that they did 70 years ago is that we want to have nothing in the food system. Everything should be reasonably certain to cause no harm. And one third of the definition of what harm is like you should be measuring harm cumulatively because both you have these products over time, but there's a lot of different things that you might consume that might expose you to one of these additives or one of these contaminants. And for the average person, I at least personally believe it shouldn't be the average person's responsibility to
Yeah.
go through everything they eat in a week or a month and add up how many of these have red 40 in it and what is the likely amount of red 40 I'm exposed to in all of this. And is that the amount that might be unhealthy or is it not? Like, ideally, someone else should be worrying about this for all of us and kind of
Mhm.
making those sort of decisions so that the average person can feel safe about what's in their food and what they're consuming.
So, we've talked about Little Debbie of it all. We've mentioned the donuts, Cheetos, Takis, but I would love to know what was the scope of the investigation? Like, how many products were a part of this? And more to the point, Paris, how many of them have you eaten?
Yes, so we tested 40 products, kind of like a broad range. I guess you could call them all like popular processed foods, things you can buy at the grocery store. I think of them as someone who lives in New York, as the sort of stuff you often see at a bodega, or like a gas station.
Right.
But I've eaten a lot of them. I mean, as has I think the average person has eaten a lot of them. The ones that kind of stuck out to me are like the Cheetos, the mini powdered donuts from Hostess, a Little Debbie oatmeal cream pie, which is a classic, roadside snack, fruit roll-ups, Gushers, just a lot of, I mean, Kool-Aid, which is something I haven't had in years since I was a child, but I remember, yeah, actually, there's probably Kool-Aid mixed into some mixed drink I'm given when I go to a New York City beach or something like that. But part of the thing that, yeah, I thought was interesting about this is we really tried to cover a wide range of products. There's also a bunch of diet like sodas and beverages that we tested as well. And it's just very interesting to try and that we actually were able to get a precise look at how much of these additives or contaminants are actually in these products, because that's something the regulators and even researchers don't know.
Yeah, I think it's going to be eye-opening for a lot of people. I mean, you mentioned Kool-Aid. It is summertime. That will be served at the barbecues and cookouts. And I just feel like, you might hear, oh, that's not really good, right? Especially when you're mixing sugar and making a drink. Like, all that sugar is never good. But to know that there's beyond that, that there are these additives that are harmful, I think it's going to be eye-opening for a lot of people.
Yeah, especially because, I mean, obviously there are some food additives out there that do provide like a real maybe benefit to the end consumer. Maybe they help prohibit the growth of bacteria or preserve a product like a meat from rotting in a way that's really useful. But some of these are like something that just makes it look brighter or more red or something.
Yeah.
Things that are not
Necessary.
necessarily, yeah, that are not
It's not
necessary.
necessary.
And it's just, I think that part of looking at all this data really made me think. I was just like, why do we need any of these? I mean, it's interesting that a lot of other countries have different formulations for the same goods that we have.
Well, that gets to the question of if food companies, if they can change their recipes and formulations to meet standards in other countries, why aren't they doing it for the American market? Are we so like stuck on it's got to be the reddest so I know it's hot. It's got to be the bluest so I know it's whatever blue is supposed to imply.
Yeah, I mean, the understanding I get from reaching out to companies for this or kind of just reading industry stories is that kind of the industry response is like, well, this is the formulations we have for these products. The US is a very large market. It's very difficult to reformulate for such a large group of people and, make those changes. There have been some little anecdotes of a cereal manufacturer. I think it might be one of the ones that have like bright little balls of cereal that I'm forgetting the name of. Maybe it was Trix. They at one point,
It's tricks.
maybe sometime in the last 10 years, reformulated away from using artificial dyes. And they said to, I believe it was maybe the New Yorker, that like sales plummeted. People didn't like the way that the tricks looked different. And so
I
then they
remember that.
introduced them back.
Yeah, because they were like putting carrot juice and beet juice and things to make the colors less or to make the colors natural, but they were less electric. Like when you pour a bowl of cereal, it doesn't look like a gleaming, glittering, radioactive mess anymore.
Yeah, it
It
doesn't
just
look
looks
like an actual rainbow, like a neon
right.
rainbow.
It
Instead,
looks
it looks like food.
Looks like it's
dull. Yeah,
glowing.
it looks dull by comparison when you've been glittered by the red number, whatever it is. When you see some beets or paprika step in for that chemical, it feels like wah wah.
Yeah, but I think part of the really interesting moment that we're in is right now, for kind of the first time that at least any of the food policy researchers I spoke to, they say that this moment is kind of unprecedented in political, like recent political food history,
Mm.
of people on both sides of the aisle, just everywhere, being very motivated by this issue of like, hey, we should take a deeper look at the additives and artificial dyes that we're using. And it does seem like people at least are saying, both the average consumers as well as politicians, that yeah, we want to make some changes and maybe move away from using unnecessary additives that haven't been like really scrutinized for their safety in a while. It remains to be seen whether the actual buying habits of people follow that. But that kind of answers what you were talking about before as to why these companies aren't doing it. But it also, this has been a big issue for RFK Jr., who's the current head of HHS, which is what the FDA reports into. But so far, they've only really taken a voluntary approach to this when it comes to artificial dyes. Like they had a whole big to-do about a year or two ago where they're saying, we're getting artificial dyes out of everything. Companies are going to remove them, but it's voluntary. And so some of the companies have pledged to get it out of their products maybe by the end of this year. Others have, for instance, the maker of Cheetos responded to this by you'll see in the stores now, they have a separate product in addition to Flaming Hot that's called Flaming Hot Crunchy Cheetos Naked. And you could buy Cheetos Naked, which are the ones without the artificial dye, or you could just buy your normal Flaming Hot. And I'm not sure that necessarily solves it from a consumer demand perspective, but
Yeah, like, come on, Frito-Lay, give me a naked Cheeto. As long as it tastes good, and like to say, I don't care. I don't need the stained fingers.
I'm good
Like,
with that
I'm
too.
not like
Yeah,
a
I don't need the
teenager.
snack
I was gonna
fingers.
Yeah.
say,
I don't need it on
it's
my
better to
tongue. Yeah,
you can snack on the Cheetos while you're typing at a computer and suddenly not be covered in Cheeto
I
dust.
get
What
dust
more could
all
you
over the
want?
place.
And there's no
Yeah.
shame. There's no fingertip shame where everyone knows that
That's
you are
what they should
marked
have
as
rebranded
a
as shame-free
grown man.
Cheetos.
Shame-free Cheetos. Paris, we know that there is an app out there that's kind of taking a look at these things, right? The Yuka app. And we partnered with them for this investigation. What happened when we mixed our chocolate with their peanut butter?
It was fantastic. I mean, yeah, our kind of partner and collaborator through all of this was the team from Yuka. They basically have an app where you can go through in your grocery store or wherever and scan products, and it kind of gives you an overview of what's in it, whether or not they think that that's like the best choice for this, and kind of what other options are. And we worked with their team, including they have an actual toxicologist on staff. They helped in like both our product selection as well as like our analysis and testing for all of it. It was fantastic.
It's like it made sense.
Yeah, like the partnership made in snack caution heaven.
Exactly.
So I wonder, have you changed any of your habits? Are there snacks that have fallen off your roster after reading or after writing this?
I mean, yeah, writing this story has absolutely wrecked my ability to go into a grocery store and be a normal person. To be honest, I'm out there looking at the ingredients of everything I buy and being like, why is that in? Should I be concerned? And I don't know. It has made me kind of look like a crazy person when I'm at the grocery store because it takes twice as long and I'm looking at everything. Which I'm not that, I don't think that that's necessarily feasible for the average
Yeah.
person,
Mm.
which is part of what I think some of the policy experts and consumer advocates I spoke with said is that obviously it's great for consumers to be able to change their habits in response to new information, but ideally people wouldn't have to do this at all. Ideally, we'd have a system that is born of everyone being outraged about this or calling on legislators to have a system where the average product you go out and buy is not going to have anything that would cause a concern like this in it.
Yeah, I mean, it's such it's a habit, you know what I mean? It's definitely a habit that we'd have to break. But besides staying away from snack staples, what can we do as consumers to purge these contaminants out of the food supply?
I mean, yeah, I think probably what it's going to have to come to is like ideally what the policy experts and kind of consumer advocates I spoke with said is there needs to probably be congressional action. Because it seems that the FDA has long struggled with kind of funding and staffing generally. And
Mm.
I mean, until recently, and I'd argue even kind of still recently, the like long running joke in like Washington policy circles is that the F in the FDA is silent. Like it's
Mm.
much of its efforts are in kind of the drug administration part.
Yeah.
And we're in a unique situation right now where the current interim head of the FDA, it was the former head of foods. It's a very rare moment where a lot of people in this administration are talking and focused on this, but it doesn't help the fact that the agency doesn't really have the money or time to actually devote to this. And so a lot of people say that the best way forward is to have them be congressionally mandated to do so and have those laws have funding baked in.
Well,
Makes sense.
thank you for that, Paris. I'm about to go grab me a bag of naked Cheetos and write my congressperson and tell them, fund them and give them the resources that they need, use some of that tariff money, and make sure that our food supply is safe. Like, let America be healthy again.
Yeah.
If we ever were.
If you
If
will.
we ever were.
Well, thank you so much for walking us through this incredible investigation. It truly is a wake-up call for the entire snacking community. And like Tanya said earlier, that knowledge is power.
Thank you guys so much for having me.
Thanks again to Paris for walking us through this incredible investigation. It truly is a wake-up call for the entire snacking community. And like Tanya said earlier, knowledge is power.
That's right. And that power gives you the ability to demand better. You can read the full Consumer Reports and Yuka investigation into snack food contaminants and additives right now on cr.org.
All right, that's it for this episode of Talking Carts. Happy, healthy snacking, y'all.
We'll see you next time.